Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here, back from vacation, holidays, crypto retirement. What's up, guys? I took some time off, to say the least. Many of you were posting and questioning, hey, what happened? Where'd you go? Some of you were sincerely worried. Thank you for the well wishes. I apologize if I was overly quiet, MIA, off the radar, went Satoshi on everybody. But, I started off with break in July, and it was nice. And then we came into August, and prices were moving up, and I was long, and I said, what the heck? Didn't do a lot of trading, missed some good trades, no doubt, but caught some good ones too. And then things got crazy, and I took a few short trades on Link and Tron and a couple of others here and there, but not a whole lot. Stock market's been probably more exciting, other than a few handful names on crypto over the last month. But it just kind of I didn't really intend it to be that long of a break, and it just kind of grew, and it was a self-imposed social media ban. And you gotta remember, this was at the height when I started it. This was at the height of the chaos, the riots and all the mumbo jumbo, and everybody hates everybody. And so it wasn't a bad time to be away from Twitter and social media outlets and news and whatnot. And so it was kind of a self-imposed, and it was kind of nice. So I got back and I said, not a whole lot's changed. Everybody's still crazy. Exchanges are still getting hacked. CFTC is still coming after everybody. SEC. Life is back to normal. So, it just extended it. And I kind of started to get used to it. And then people started pinging me and said, where are you? What's going on? So here I am. Back. Alive, well, doing well, thank you. I took some time. I had a nice break. Went to the Grand Canyon. I got away from the heat for a little while. Enjoyed some, just kind of hanging out, doing other things. Still keeping an eye on the markets, but all is well. So thank you. We'll get back to it here. I'm going to look at the charts here. Mostly just kind of talk about the big cap names and a couple of names that are on my radar that I'm just kind of keeping an eye on. But just a quick market update is really all, and a quick hello. Haven't quite decided what my new cadence is going to be in terms of the channel or my posting. Still thinking about it, but for now, here we go. So looking at the overall market cap metrics, the bot status is short, went flat on Thursday on the daily. It's been choppy. I haven't really been paying attention to the 4-hour bot status much because the market's just been in range bound. So haven't been doing that. But I noticed the daily went flat here recently. So that's kind of piquing my interest. There's a handful of names that are really strong. Theta's been moving up nicely. Binance Coin is still going good. Keeping an eye on Monero. So some of the names that I've been watching are on this list. So the trending names scan is doing its job. So pointing out some names to be keeping an eye on there. But let's take a look at the chart. So I want to look at Bitcoin. I'm going to start with the daily chart. I'm not going to focus on the shorter term time frames because they're just a lot noisier right now. But this is the daily chart of BTC. Now, the thing that interests me more, honestly, is the longer term charts, weekly charts, and heck, even the monthly, which I really never look at, right? As a trader, I mean, monthly charts are not that valuable if you're trading 1 hour, 4 hour time frames, but the monthly chart from a long-term perspective is a little bit more exciting. So we'll get into that here in a second, but let me close this. I'll give you guys a little bit more chart space. But what I want to point out is, looking at the time frame, right, during my break, going into the July time frame, we were kind of range bound. I went long. I said, whatever happens, happens. Came back in August. We were at 12K. It was like, okay, cool, nice. And then, of course, just been choppy and sideways since then. Some other names were much better than this, but all in all, it's still holding up. Now, here's what I want to point out. In the near term, there is a potential for a little bit of a inverse cup and handle forming right there. Now, there is a flaw with this pattern, right? Normally, that's, pretty decent pattern there. It's right below resistance. And the way you look at this is, does it break this lower trend line? And then that's a breakdown. The flaw here, however, is the fact that this inverse cup and handle formation is after a run to the upside. Generally speaking, you want to see those at the lower end of a trend line. So if you see a downtrend and goes sideways and it does one of these bad boys, then yeah, usually it's another break to the downside. That's not the case here. The case here is we've had a big break we saw in March, and of course it's been bounced from the lows since then. hitting sideways and then finally breaking out. So I'm looking at a couple of ways now. From a near term, very short term perspective, I'm actually hedged to the downside. Longer term positions are still long, but I'm watching this. I'm thinking we might crack it to the downside. How low does it go? It just depends. I mean, it could just be a quick shakeout and then off, but if it starts to crack 9K, then that's going to be interesting. But for now, that's what I'm watching. The two levels to be watching on the downside and the upside are really around 10.2 on the downside, and the trend line here is going to be an early indicator. And on the upside, getting over 11.2 or so, 11,200 in that range. If it starts to hold above that, that really starts to negate this pattern. And then the longer term charts really start to look much better, which is what I'm watching right now. So until then, it's just range bound. Keep an eye on those two levels. But I think we're coming up to a decision point here, and we'll see how that goes. There's just so many other outside influences right now that are factoring in. We've got the election coming up in the US. You've got hacking news and exchanges coming under fire again. And, there's just a couple of things that are potentially driving some more influence into the market here. How does the broader stock market react with Trump getting sick? Does he recover quickly? I mean, there's just, a lot of potential big events, right, that could spook things, cause people to kind of panic a little bit. And so I'm factoring that in as well. But for the near term, on a trading perspective, definitely watching this trend line, leaning to the short side on the trading perspective. But like I said, I want to focus on the longer term chart because this is really the most important thing. A lot of people have been talking about we're back in a bull market, we're in a bull trend, etc. In my opinion, this is not a bull market yet, but I think it's getting very close to breaking out. Does it mean that the low is not in? Absolutely, right? The low could be in, and most likely, and my bet is that was the low. I mean, that was a massive shakeout, unprecedented. My thoughts are that's probably the low. Will we ever see 5K, 3K BTC again? Oh man, I'd be really hard pressed to believe that. But is it a bull market, right? The fact that we've bounced from the low and are right back into that 10K range doesn't necessarily mean we're back in bull mode, because if you look at the prior year, I mean, we've been back in this range for quite some time, trading in and around it. But what I do like that it finally broke out over this 10K range, which had proven to be a longer term weekly resistance level. And it was a little higher, it was about 10.5 or so, but that was nice to finally see it pop right through that on some good volume. And at this point, of course it could change if it breaks lower, but at this point, this is just looking like a nice breakout followed by a throwback. And then I was trying to decide, which way do we go? Do we get a little bit lower push to the downside and then finally break higher, or is that it? That's the end of the throwback. And so I'm liking that from that perspective. The longer term chart, like I said, it's not a bull market just yet, but if you really start to zoom out and look at the big picture chart, let me clear that line for us here. I mean, this is starting to really set up nicely for a potentially explosive move to the upside. If we go to the monthly chart, which I hardly ever look at, to be honest, weekly charts I do quite a bit, monthly just too zoomed out for me. But if you look at the monthly chart in this example, there's something very interesting to note. At the top of the climactic move that we saw in late 2017, price was the only month in the history of Bitcoin that it closed over 12K. The only month that it's ever done that. Every other month, I mean, we've had a few little pokes above it, but on a monthly closing basis, we've never actually held above that point since that time frame. And if you look at this longer term chart really setting up, trend lines are starting to move upward. If it continues to hold here and start to coil up and breaking out over 12K, if it starts to hold on a monthly basis, that's going to really be the start of the bull market, in my opinion. That's the way I'm looking at it, and I think that will be the big one that everyone keeps waiting for, and that's the one that's going to take us into the high 5-digit mark, maybe 6 digits, but certainly into the new high territory, right? Breaking over this 20K mark is what I'd be looking for at that point. So we could very quickly see a double from this 10K range right into that 20s range. And so that's what I'd be watching, but that's why I'm saying it's not a new bull market yet. We have bull trends and bull phases, no doubts, especially on the lower time frame. If you're trading 4-hour charts or daily charts, there's plenty of good upswings and downswings to be had on those charts. But on the longer term monthly view, this is what I'm watching. Big breakout over here will be of importance. At that point, I would be a strong hand holder and shy away from the quick wiggles. I mean, there'll still be taking some trades, but at that point, you want to start really writing it out for the next big move. The last time we saw something very similar was back here, right? When we saw this big reset, a little bit of a cup. And again, it wasn't really a bull market until we broke above that $1,100 mark. When we finally did, I mean, it was off to the races. It went from $1,000 to $20,000 basically during that climactic move. And so how high could we go if we do this? Am I looking for a 10x? No way. I know a lot of people are. Does it go to 100K? Maybe, but every move up is going to be a little bit smaller than before just because of the law of large numbers, market cap and all that. But could we hit 40,000, 30,000, 50,000 on that next leg up? Absolutely. Certainly in the realm of possibility. So that's what I'm going to be watching out for. Now, is that a next week type of thing? Certainly not, right? I mean, that might not happen until 2021. Most likely that's the scenario I'm looking for, but I wanted to point out that significant trend line, that significant line in the sand on the resistance to the upside, starting to hold above that 12K, and I think it's off to the races. Then at that point, I will be in the camp of, yes, this is a strong bull market phase that just began. But until then, one day at a time, as I like to say here. And yes, we've had a nice upswing. Right now, things are looking kind of interesting here. We'll see how they go. I'm hedging to the downside for now. Anything over 11K, 11.2, then I'll change my tone from that perspective. Let's look at a few other names here before I wrap this one up here. I'm going to try to keep it a little bit on the shorter side today from a video. I'll quickly go through these next few names. A few names that I'm liking on a breakout. Looking at ETH, I'm going to go ETH USD, in fact, here. Watching this one, of course, it's already had a nice run. I remember complaining when during the March timeframe, I bought the dip, and I think I bought it like 135, and then I bought a little bit more at 140, and I remember thinking, oh man, it just dipped all the way down to sub 100. In retrospect, that was a nice buy, and that was a long-term buy. In fact, I was just kind of adding some long-term capital on that bloodbath. Now I wish I would have bought more, but of course we've had a big run since then. What I'm watching here now is, this general pullback that you're seeing right now. I'm going to just basically be keeping an eye for a turn in the trend. Right now, it looks like it wants to go a little bit lower, but if it starts to hold up, I'm watching this from a longer term perspective as a potential bull flag into a throwback zone. You can see right here, this was a little bit of a breakout point. If it continues to hold this and then starts to turn the trend to the upside, I'm liking that. So definitely keeping an eye on ETH. Looking at Monero XMR on the USD side. It's one I've been watching for about a month or two now, and it looks like it's getting ready here. You can see very clear breakout zone on Monero right around that $100 mark, between 100 and 107. Looks like it wants to start poking out. It's had a nice run again. A lot of things did from the collapse in March. Certainly a strong bounce back, but it's sitting here near the highs, right around resistance. Next major high is around 120. Above that, things could really start to run. So definitely one I'm watching there. Theta has been strong. Watching Theta, the trend there just continues to go higher. Nice little move to the upside there. A few other names that are strong. BNB, looking at Binance USD here, holding up well and just continues to march higher. The trend is your friend so far. It's getting a little choppy here, so we'll see how this one starts to consolidate, but so far the trend is your friend on that guy. And then some of the DeFi names and all that good stuff. I'm just going to look at Lend here real quick. Just continue, had that huge move, I mean monster move, and I'm watching to see if this is a bull flag scenario or if it's a descending triangle that's about to crack. So I'd be watching around that 40-cent mark, 42 cents. Below that, not looking pretty. So it's coming to a head here. If it continues to hold up, if it bounces off this, then look for a break above 59 cents or so, and that could trigger the next leg up. So a few names to keep an eye on. For now, the market just feels like it's in digestion mode, consolidating here a little bit after a pretty nice move in August, September. But there's a few other names that are doing similar things, just kind of pulling back, holding up. I think the market's just going into this holding pattern, see how things shake out in the broader economic perspective, the elections, the general economy, the stock markets. Whether we like to admit it or not, there has been some correlation in recent months, especially with this year and the pandemic and all that, the panic, because of a lot of factors, right? Because of monetary policy and unlimited printing and panic, and the fact that Bitcoin is not necessarily an obscure asset class anymore. There's a lot of big money in Bitcoin, and a lot of big money coming into these, through futures and options and other things. Maybe not so much some of the other names, but certainly BTC, ETH. There's a lot of capital, so there will be some correlation between panics and booms with regards to the broader economies and the stock market and commodities and so forth. So there is a little bit of correlation there, but hope that helps, guys. Appreciate the well wishes and the thoughts, and I will catch you on the next one. Take care, everyone.